Alright, so in this tutorial we're going to be looking at walls, all different wall types, how to create them, how to modify them, what the structures are. We'll be looking at positioning the face of a wall, the profile of a wall, wall sweeps, how to put a wall-hosted family like a window into a wall, stacked walls, and then lastly curtain walls. Curtain walls, we're just going to cover the basics, looking at some of the default options. In the future, we're going to be looking at how to load custom mullion profiles, but we really need to cover families, what families are, and how families work before we can do that. So let's get started. Under our Architecture tab, we have Wall. When I click Wall, you can see I'm given a list of default preloaded walls for an architectural project. A lot of them right here are generic. Now typically when I start a project, I'll just work with a generic wall. I'll give myself 6 inches and know that later in design development, I'll come back and define exactly what that structure is. If I know from the start that it's going to be a brick or concrete wall, I'll use that. If not, I'll just say generic. At that point, I'm not sure if the finish will be wood, gypsum, or something else. So right now, let's just look at how we can place a generic 6-inch wall. If I zoom in and click here, you can see that there's a center line running. And that's because initially I had selected, if I'll do this, finish that wall right there and hit escape, that I'm locating the wall based on its wall center line. If I said I wanted to do the exterior face, here you can see I'm on one edge of the wall, and by hitting space I can flip to define what side is the exterior. Similarly, I could always do an interior face, which is going to act the exact same way. Hitting space would flip it. And I can always do core faces. So this would be the structural portion of the wall, not counting the finish. Sometimes in projects you'll dimension to the stud or the structural portion of the wall and allow the finish to change. I typically don't do that. I usually run dimensions to our finished face, and the framers know to check what the finish schedule is to make sure that they allow for that extra 5/8 or 3/4 inch cladding on whatever studs they put in. Once I've made a wall, I can actually go in and modify it, just like anything else. So here I'll click this wall. I'm going to jump to our 3D view. Got both walls there. I'll go to a shaded view so we can see it. And they're both generic 6-inch walls. If I click this wall, let's change it and say that it's a 8-inch masonry wall. So now you can see there's a small hatch on it. By hitting Shift and middle clicking, I can rotate. So that's a block hatch, but I don't see that wrapping the corner or anything. It's just a simple representation. By clicking the wall, I have an opportunity to very simply drag the height of it up and down. This wall was initially made that was 20 feet high, unconnected. You can see that right here. Top constrained, unconnected height, 20 feet. If I click my smaller wall here, I can say, oh, let's make that 11 feet 6 inches. And I'll change in the height. I can also do things here that I can say it's room bounding or not. I've never needed to tell it that it's not room bounding, but I suppose if it was a collapsible partition you were showing, you could say no, it's not room bounding. It gives me a little bit of information. It's 20'6" long, and it has an area of 235 square feet on the face. So this is something that we could use later as we calculated, like, say, the amount of tile necessary to tile all of these walls. I could go in, make a schedule, filter it, and get the face area to decide how much tile I need to buy for the job. Down here, this is something we haven't yet talked about, but it's about project phasing. If I was doing an existing project, I could say that this wall already exists, and later I could define if it needs to be demolished or if it will remain. I can also tell it that it comes in different project phases. So I could say, like, it's going to come in project phase 1, 2, 3, and so down the line. And that will just help create a different series of drawings that will give different appearance for walls being built in any particular time. With this other wall back here, let's see what else we have here. Let's make it an interior 1-hour rated 4 7/8 partition. You can see nothing really changes about it, but if I click this, I'm going to go to the wall structure. We looked at this briefly in the last tutorial, but if I edit the type of this wall and go into the wall construction structure, I see that it's a 5/8 inch piece of gypsum wallboard, metal studs, and another 5/8 inch piece. I'm going to zoom in here, and you can see that it shows me which layer I select. This is the interior side, the structure itself, and the exterior. If I cancel this and duplicate this wall, and I always recommend that you start with a basic wall and duplicate it, Let's say interior 4 7/8 inch partition, and I'll just add with wood cladding. So now I'm editing this new wall that I've made. I've duplicated the existing wall. I'll go and edit, and I'm going to insert a finish here. Once I'm in material, I have to click the little ellipsis here. I'll go down and see if they have some wood. Softwood lumber will be fine. I can actually define a surface pattern for that, so I'll click here and say that I want something that's maybe vertical, small, like planks of wood. The color's fine, it can be black, so I'll say OK there. And here I'll say it's 3/4 inch thick cladding. So now you can see that I have interior gypsum, the stud, exterior gypsum, and now a 3/4 inch wood cladding. Say OK. Cannot ascend from the core boundary, finish in face. It's finish 2, finish 1. I think finish 1, finish 2. We have to do it that way. There we go. So I just needed the correct numbers in finishes. And here, now you can see on this side, or if I click the wall and hit space, it'll flip around. And now I have my wood finish on this exterior face of the wall. Another thing you can do, I'm going to delete this wall here, the block wall, is to edit a profile of a wall. And you can see when I have my wall selected, I can select Edit Profile. Now, if for some reason I had a complicated wall, let's say that it comes down and does something like this. I'm going to use TR to trim these lines and delete this top line. I'm making a custom profile of the wall. It's not a simple rectangular extrusion now, and it shows me that that's that 20-foot unconnected height that the wall typically would be, but I've made a custom top profile that would allow me to, snap a roof or another element just above it. This is something that sometimes I use. Rarely will I need to, but I can actually draw a profile on the inside to make an opening in a wall, something like this. Now, really, I could just put a window in it. I would never have to make this opening, but for some reason, you needed to find a way to create a void in the wall. You could always draw an interior profile. I'm going to undo that interior and go back to our normal wall here. I'll show you that as we work with other components in Revit, you sometimes will need to have wall-hosted components. So this, like if I click a window, and right now I'm using a 36 by 48 fixed window. There's different sizes here. Let's go 24 by 72. This object, this window, will only ever want to be placed in a wall. If I try to put it in a floor, it wouldn't work. If I try to put it in a piece of furniture, it wouldn't work. There's a chance it may work in a roof, but typically these things are made custom only to go into walls. So let's see if I just place the window there. If I wanted to, I could click the window and copy it over, say 3 feet. And let's copy it one more time at, say, 7 feet. So now I have windows hosted in the wall. If I do something to the wall, like move it, the windows will move with it because they're integrated together. I can also go in and change my windows. So if I click this window, let's change it to a different size. I can move it over. If I was looking at it in elevation, let's see, maybe south elevation, here we go. I could come in and edit the height. So let's put it up at 8 feet. So I have the ability to control these things within the wall it's hosted. You can see I might have a problem if I ever try to move the window outside. It actually still works. I didn't expect it would. Maybe if I put it totally out. Yeah, it's finally saying you're not cutting through a wall. Clearly a window can't go here. I should also say that when I do custom profiles like this, I can click my wall and I can reset that profile. Let's say that I no longer need it to do that crazy geometry. I can reset it. It's back up to normal height. The next thing I want to look at is custom wall sweeps. This isn't something I use too much, and I think it's just because of the type of architecture I do. But it is an interesting thing you can do to walls. So here, with my basic wall that I've made custom with the wood cladding, I'm going to hit Edit Type. And in my preview here, when I go to Structure, as long as I'm in a sectional view, I can go in and add certain elements to it, like sweeps and reveals. Again, these are loading up families. We haven't covered families yet, so we're just going to stick to the basics. Let's imagine that part of the way up this wood wall, I need to put a block in, a brick lintel perhaps, and all my windows will sit right under that lintel. So I'm going to click Sweeps. I'm going to not load profile, but I'm going to add a sweep. And under sweeps, I can change my profile. Let's say I want a wall sweep brick soldier course. If I go to my materials, I know that there is a brick soldier course material right here. You can see that brick soldier course with a red color. Let's see, where's the distance? Let's say that 8 feet up the wall will be the soldier course, and all my windows will sit right under that. It's 8 feet from the base. It's going to be on the exterior side, and I'm going to offset it -2 inches, so it's integrated in the wall. I'll apply that so I can see it here. Let's increase the height to 10 feet. Apply that. As I zoom in, you can, well, I can't zoom in here, but I can zoom in here. You can see that right now it's actually the soldier course is inside the block. That's not what I'm going to want to do, so let's edit that sweep one last time. Let's see if we can, I know that we have 3/4 inch wood and 5/8 inch drywall. Well, if I wanted to, I could do the math, but I could also do -0.75 plus 0.675, which is 5/8 inch. So as long as I start an equation with an equal sign, Revit will figure out that dimension for me. That's 1 and 109/16, and I need to go negative. Apply. There you go. You can see now that my block is right on the stud, so I'd be able to reinforce that and put a lintel in there. Say OK, OK, OK. And my wall updates. I'm going to use AL, and I'm going to get in my 3D view here and right click so I get the bottom side of that soldier course, and I'm going to snap that to be the head of my window. Do that one more time by hitting tab and put my window right there. So now right above the windows I have that brick coursing. If I wanted to, I could come in and edit this. So let's edit that type, go into my structure, go into my sweeps and say, oh, you know, 1 course isn't enough, let's go 3. Apply, apply, and now I've got a big band of brick on that wall. You can also build, let's imagine this. Let's think that we want a brick base, a wood wall, a brick sweep, and more wood wall. If I wanted to, I could come in, edit this wall, again go structure, sweeps. I could add a new sweep that would be brick at the base. But I want to look at what's called a stacked wall. So I'm going to cancel this. I'm just going to go WA and create a new wall, something that we can work with and test out. In this wall, I'm going to say edit type. I'm going to set it not from basic wall or curtain wall, which we'll cover next, but stacked wall. Now stacked wall just is very simple. It asks for structure, and you end up defining what layers are stacked. So here we have 3-foot high block wall on metal stud. You can see that in the section here. We have CMU block on metal stud, and then brick above. So let's change this one to be our wood clad wall. So we're now going to have a block wall and then our wood clad wall on top. You can see that they're not in alignment. So let's see if we change our exterior. Let's not do CMU on metal stud. Let's see if we can just do concrete block. So let's see, just do 12-inch masonry. So our wall is now sitting on that, and I can offset my wall one way or the other. So let's try -4 inches. It's pretty close. I need to go -3.375 inches. And now we have the back of the wall aligned. We have a little shelf here, which would obviously be a problem for snow and birds and other things. We could probably put a sweep on the bottom of this wall. We'll just see what this does for us. There you go. We have, if we go to this side, we have a block wall stacked on top of that as our wood wall, and our wood wall maintains the sweep. You can see that here we were 10 feet above a grade. Here we're 10 feet above where the wall starts. And because we have a 3-foot block wall, we're actually up at 13 feet. So if I wanted to, I'd have to change that sweep in this instance. Let's go back one more time and just look at some other properties here. If I wanted, I can constrain this not to be unconstrained at 20 feet, but I could say just go up to level 2. And if I look, it says I can't sweep because my level 2 is too low. In elevation, you can see that level 2 is only 10 feet up. Let's change that so that it's 18 feet up. There's level 2. We can close our elevations, click this line again, and it's snapping right up to level 2. So now that level is not cutting through our coursework or sweep, and we're fine to use it that way. Can still do everything we talked about in the beginning. I could come in and do some, funky geometry at the top of this wall. Let's just draw a new profile here. Trim these lines back and delete that top line that we don't need. And I can do something that's sloped at the top. We can also edit this wall and say we only want 8 inches of concrete block at the bottom. We can change that now so we have a little CMU course that's down at the foundation, and our wall sits on top of that. The last thing I want to look at is the basics of curtain walls. So if I go and create a new wall, I'm going to go down to the bottom here, and we have our basic walls here, we have curtain walls, and then we have stacked walls. So the architectural template comes with these 3 presets, and we're just going to start with curtain wall 1. That's fine. So we'll drag it out just like we've done everything else. See what we get here. I'm going to hold shift so that it's just horizontal. And say OK. And it's just a giant piece of glass right now. There's nothing defining where the mullion spacing needs to be or what type of mullions will be used. And if I was really being picky, I could come in and draw under architecture curtain grid. I could draw my own curtain grid in the system. So let's say I could say 5'6", 10 feet, 13 feet. I can come on the side and say, well, we want at 42 inches a line. And then I could come back and apply mullions either to a grid line or all grid lines. So here, I could just apply mullions to everything. And pretty quickly, I've created a custom curtain wall. I can also control this numerically. So I'm going to undo all of those curtain grids I made, click my wall, edit type, and come in and say my vertical grid layout is going to be a maximum spacing. You could say that it has to be a fixed distance. You could say every 5 feet you must put a mullion. But what I like to do is do a maximum spacing, and that allows for the mullions to be equidistant. Right now they're at 5 feet, so that's my vertical grid. My horizontal grid, I'm going to say, again, max spacing, except this time I'm going to make it 12 feet. We'll say OK, and you can see now that the wall has been divided up. If we look, I'm going to hit DI and click. You can see the little dash line that represents the center line of that curtain grid to this one, and down here. I'm not more than 5 feet, but to have equally spaced mullions in this entire system, they're all going to be 4'7.5". If I change that, if I come back to my entire wall system, change that and say it's not maximum spacing, it's a fixed distance, then you can see we have 5 foot, 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 the remainder. I like using maximum spacing because it creates things that are more even and symmetrical, which I like in glass. Let's go in again and edit. Let's gotta click this wall and edit the type. We can also control what mullions we put on here. So you have to imagine that there's 3 different conditions really. We have an interior horizontal, and interior vertical, and that receives glass on 2 sides, right? This piece of glass tucks in here, and this piece of glass tucks in, so that the top of this piece and the bottom of this piece need to be held by this mullion. We also have sill conditions, where the bottom mullion only holds the bottom piece of this glass. Similarly, the head condition here only holds the top. And we have the left and right hand sides, which are the jambs. So you can go in, and as the project evolves, you can download profiles from different manufacturers and use actual window mullions that will be built in the field. I think it's really important because you need to figure out where those are placed in relationship to the stud framing. It also goes into kind of figuring out what the leasable and rentable square footages are of commercial office buildings. For right now, let's just say that we're going to use a 2.5 by 5 rectangular mullion for the interior, and we'll do the same for the horizontal. And if we apply that, you can see that the majority are receiving those mullions. Let's see if I can say OK. We'll come over here, and you can see we don't see in any great detail, but that mullion is going to be receiving those pieces of glass. Let's look at level 1 plan, and we'll see if we go to fine resolution. We don't get anything different. It's just a very simple mullion rectangle. It's fine, not a big deal. But let's go back and edit the wall and try to get the boundaries set up correctly. So we'll edit our type here. Under vertical, this is going to be our left and right hand jambs. We can change our type. We were using the simple 2.5 by 5. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's set this one to the 1-inch square. So this is border type 1 and border type 2. So down here at the sill, we have the same mullion as we have in the interior. At the top, we have this little tiny mullion that's not actually holding anything. And that's because we set up the border types to be different. We don't want that. So I'm coming back in, and let's see, I'll set all the border types to be the exact same mullion. And this is just a good placeholder to start with. It's a fairly close to common size for glazing. I use 2x4, 2x6, 2x8 mullions pretty often, and it always depends on the kind of wind loads and the position of the glass in the building. So I'll say OK. Now we have mullions that capture everything all the way around. We've talked in the past about the idea of an SSG mullion, which is a structurally silicone glazed, that really this piece of glass wouldn't have a cap on the outside like we see here. It would be much more flat as glazing goes. And we'll look at that as we get into detailed parametric families and loading custom profiles into curtain wall. One last thing to look at here is how to create a more complicated curtain wall system by using some reference lines. So here I'm using DL. I'm going to draw a line out. This is just detail lines. I'll draw a line down here and another line this way. And I'm going to use the fillet arc between two intersecting lines to create something that's a little more complicated for the curtain wall to do. Let's see, that one went over, didn't want to do it. Just like that. Now hitting WA to create a curtain wall, I'm going to use the pick line tool, hover over my one segment, and hit tab until I get every segment selected, and then I'll click. You can see that it rounds out the curtain wall here. Obviously, it's not able to bend the glass that way. And this is pretty common. It's pretty rare on a project that you'd actually use curved glazing. It is possible, but this is something that I'd want to come in and control a little better. I'm not too happy with the way this joins up, so I'd want to spend some time really working on where those control points are, and maybe for these portions of the wall, I could come in and say that I would custom control that curtain wall grid. But using the default for right now, you can see our results. It's pretty good at figuring out where to put it, but we do have a lot of room of improvement. And as we look into Curtain Walls Part 2 coming up in the next week, we'll spend some time on how to customize this. The final part I want to look at is the infill panel. So here we have the mullion. If I hover over this, you can see it's now selecting the glazed portion. If I click that, you can see that's all the glass. I'm going to go over here. Oh, you know what? I didn't get it. Hit tab. There we go. Just this. It says system panel glazed. I can also change this to a solid panel. So this wouldn't be something that I'd see through. Let's go up here. Sometimes you can change these to custom wall types. Let's try if I did a 4-inch brick. So now that curtain wall panel is actually filled in with brick. I'm going to hit tab one more time. Let's see if we can put in our interior with wood-clad partition. It's telling me that little warning that popped up was saying that my sweep couldn't be available. But as you can see, I can use the curtain wall system to create something that's not just glazing. I can put infill panels in it. And we're going to continue to develop this idea by making our own custom infill panels in the weeks ahead. I hope that helps. Stay tuned for floors. They're up next.